Good afternoon and welcome to the Change the Game Not Africa podcast, part 2. I'm Zsófia Bácsi Bayan from Foundation for Africa, and my guest is Réka BALOGH from the HAND organization. I would like to ask some more personal questions from you, if you're open to it.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, how did you first meet with international development cooperation and this whole field?
Well, I studied Hungarian literature and grammar, but more importantly, cultural anthropology in university. And I basically wrote my thesis on an Indian topic. It had absolutely nothing to do with international development cooperation, but at the same time, for field work, I went there and I spent there altogether, because I went there a couple of times, like 1 year in India. And I did not really meet international NGOs or international organizations working in India, but at the same time, India is so big that it can happen very easily. That's very much characteristic of the country and the development sector of the country, that NGOs or actors, development actors, they come from the capital, from big cities, from towns to the rural areas. And I was in the rural area, so I could see the NGOs, what type of work they do there. And it's not called international development since it's not international, but at the same time, the principles, the kind of activities are quite the same. So that was the first time, and my topic was absolutely a cultural or a religious topic. So I was very much occupied with that, but at the same time, I had the kind of eyes for the problems as well, for other problems than my topic. And I could feel that I cannot really contribute through this topic or the cultural anthropology to the betterment or the improvement of the lives of these people. But if you do development, that might happen. Of course, nothing is perfect. There are failures in development work as well. But at the same time, still, I felt it's much more useful than what I've been doing up till that moment. So when I came back, my whole approach kind of changed. And the first ad, what I saw for a job, because I finished also, I wrote my thesis, finished university. The first ad, what I saw for a job was HAND Association's advertisement for being a coordinator. So that I said, this is the perfect thing for me. So I applied, I got the job, and since then I've been working here. So
such a nice story. So would you say that your experience in India is what really motivates you still up to this day, day by day, in your work?
Definitely, absolutely. For me, at least, that motivation is always there. My friends absolutely laugh about me that for 20 years, I've been working for the same organization in the same field, professional field. But I keep on telling them that I'm interested in. So this motivates me. And even I cannot really imagine to work for a company, for a private company, because personally for me, this is the kind of context or arena and field which I was always looking for. So I'm kind of satisfied in that regard.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, you must have had a lot of challenges over the years. Do you have one that became one of your biggest What successes for you over the years?
Successes in policy work is sometimes very difficult to think of
I can imagine.
any kind of success, because even if you manage to influence, because in advocacy, what do you want? Basically, you want to influence, you want to change the policy for the better. And usually it happens only in tiny bits, in small steps. So you go for something really big, and what you get, after all, is something really small. So in that sense, sometimes you are not that much satisfied that your work is being fruitful or successful. But at the same time, still, for example, if we take the role of watchdog role of NGOs, I don't know, 10, 15 years back, something like that. We were asking, because at that time, Hungary was not part of DAC, so it was not supposed to provide that type of very detailed statistics like nowadays. So we were asking for the information, for data from the government. And for months and months, we were absolutely not successful. So finally, we decided to go to the ombudsman. At that time, I think that institution worked much better. And basically, the ombudsman told them that according to Hungarian law, they have to provide the data to us. So they had no other choice. They provided, we could do our Aid Watch report. So in that sense, definitely, that was a success story. How today it's, you know, the situation of accessing data, that's another question, whether it was development or under development, that's to be seen. But at the same time, still there are such kind of success stories, during these 20 years.
Would you say that working in this field brings kind of character development to the person who is working in it?
I'm quite sure, yes. Even for very experienced donors, very experienced NGOs, very experienced NGO workers, colleagues. For example, the kind of perception of partnership, how I should approach my partner in the local context, in the global south, that's been changing for I don't know how many decades. From a very paternalistic, sometimes colonial style, to today's kind of approach, which is absolutely more on an equal footing. Still, again, very much a big room for improvement. But at the same time, for example, there are NGOs in the global north, which decided to hand over, for example, of the right to have the headquarters of the international NGO in the global south, locally, and not in the north. They just collect money, they send to the south. And basically, the South headquarters is now in charge of developing, the programs and implement the programs locally. So in that sense, the change, for example, in partnership, and I think on a very personal level too, it has an impact on you, how you approach other people, those people who you'd like to help in your work. And that's just one example.
Well, and who would you recommend this path to follow?
Definitely for those people who are anyway interested in working in an international context. I was one myself. That's why I studied cultural anthropology. And for me, that was very obvious that for fieldwork, because I could have done fieldwork in Hungary too, but for me, that was very obvious that I need to go somewhere far, to either developing or anyway a kind of exotic place and do fieldwork, because that type of excitement of getting to know another culture, that was very important for me personally. And specifically, if you work in development cooperation, you need to have that type of interest or curiosity. Otherwise, sometimes it could be really difficult to accommodate yourself in the local context. So if somebody is interested in international context, I think that could be a very interesting career path for them. If you are not that much inclined to do work in the private sector, then again, I think dealing with the social questions, working in the social sectors, could be very much an opportunity or option for you.
I'm definitely a person who is very much interested in this field. So I really hope that all that you mentioned once will become my my everyday life.
Yeah.
And also I can really relate to how important is it to know a lot of different cultures. I spent my Erasmus in the United Kingdom, but I got to know a lot of different people from all over the globe. And also, well, I'm not that experienced in international development and humanitarian work, but when the Ukrainian war broke out, I had the opportunity to work for the Hungarian Charity Service of the Order of Malta, where I really, it was quite a tough work for me emotionally. However, I experienced a lot, and it really made me realize how privileged we are here, and we have the possibility, but also the responsibility to help others in need. So I really hope that maybe in the future, through international development cooperation, I can also contribute to bring a little bit of change into these people's life.
Well, actually, that's what we also have as a kind of goal. In the past also, we had this goal, and for future, so it's always having an influence on our work to facilitate people to become kind of change makers, agents of change. We see the problems, the challenges of the world. So definitely some kind of change is needed. And if we just sit there and wait for someone else to change the world for us, definitely that's going to happen, not now, but somewhere further in the future. So in that sense, I think if young people kind of feel this commitment, that's always a win for us.
Are there any other career opportunities in international development cooperation that you haven't mentioned so far?
Well, in other countries, not so much in Hungary, but in other countries, definitely the kind of government institutions, the agencies, the so-called development agencies, like Hungary Helps Agency is in Hungary, but it's a very small agency. In the UK, it's a huge institution. But even in Austria, it's a quite big employer. In the government offices, like the ministries, people with such expertise are very much needed. So not only in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where diplomats work, but there are other sections of these institutions where you can have long-term kind of employment. And specifically, if we talk about, again, the European institutions, again, there's a Directorate General responsible for this field of the external policy of the EU. So again, in the EU, in governments, you can have, and of course, there, again, not specifically in Hungary, but in other countries, private companies also, they employ people with such kind of experience.
Well, I hope I can manage in the future, definitely. And then talking about career opportunities, right now I'm working as a trainee here at the Foundation for Africa. And our organization is, well, it's 20 years old, and we are implementing development projects in the Democratic Republic of Congo, also in the capital of Kinshasa and Goma, which has been a civil war zone for decades. And during the EU presidency in 2024, we would like to give this another big spectacle with the second Hungarian Africa Week, because we already had the first one, which was very successful in 2022, September. And there were economic actors and also representatives from the government. And if I know it correctly, 9 African countries were represented. So we really hope that during the second Hungary Africa Week, which will take place under the EU presidency, which also provide a fitting framework for it, also the civil, the economic, the governmental, the educational, and the cultural actors can meet and establish new contacts or deepen the ones that they already have. So we really hope that your organization, HAND, will also be able to participate in this event.
Definitely. We participated or even co-organized one day in the last one. So you can count on it. Absolutely. We also, if it's the time, I can also mention that HAND will implement an EU-funded project, a 2-year project focusing mainly on the second half of 2024, being the Hungarian presidency of the EU. But already before that, so basically next month, we are going to start the project. So there will be a kind of run-up phase for the second or till the second half of 2024. And we absolutely count on the participation of our member organizations, like Foundation for Africa is a member of HAND and other members of ours. But actually there will be calls for proposal, or most probably one call for proposal announced for other organizations, civil society organizations as well. And if possible, we are not sure about that yet, but for example, for informal groups of people, most probably youth. So if for university students or other youth groups, it could be interesting, then definitely we'll be counting on their participation too.
Well, thank you very much. That's very interesting. I would like to pose a few questions about how you see the future, and especially if you could tell us what are your goals concerning the IDEC work.
These are basically my personal goals as well, but as HAND, I can absolutely say that we'd like to create more awareness and more support for development cooperation in Hungary, in the society or the general public. For sure, this 2-year project will definitely contribute to that. And we have a very specific goal within that overall goal, and that's to address policy and decision makers in that regard too. We might think that decision makers and policy makers are more aware and are more supportive of development cooperation, but unfortunately that's in majority of the cases it's not the case. So in that sense we again need to work a lot on that. We also want another goal of us or objective of us to engage more young people to join us in our efforts. And as I told you, also to help them to assist them to become change makers. After all, it's whatever is coming, it's about their future. And another very important aspect for us is development effectiveness. That's the kind of term which is used in the international policy discussions. Basically, what we mean by that, we'd like to improve the quality of official development assistance or development cooperation, which is provided to developing countries, not to do good things, but at the same time to do it well. So I think these 3 things characterize our goals.
Well, for me, as a person who is ahead of her career, I would like to gain as much experience as I can to widen my horizons and find that specific area that I would be interested and motivated in to work concerning international development and cooperation. Well, and I strongly believe that raising public awareness is key in this field. But hopefully, by actively searching for opportunities and gaining more work experience in the future, I will also be able to change a little bit for better. Well, what would you say about the whole field of international development cooperation in the future? What can we tell about it?
Well, I don't know what will happen actually, but at the same time, what I'm hoping for is definitely that on the side of people, a certain kind of awareness, or the level of awareness will increase. And that type of awareness enables us as a society, not only civil societies, not just the civil society organizations, but of the people, of the general public. We develop that type of demand, a very clear and well-articulated demand on our side, which makes policy and decision makers to basically listen to us and do or make the steps which are needed for a better future for all of us.
Well, as far as I know, for example, the Hungary Helps program, which you mentioned that was established in 2019, is responsible for quite an amount of international development cooperation work. But it is still new and it's in a learning process. So I really hope that Hungary will able to place more emphasis on this field and on working together with the civil sector too, since I strongly believe that if they strengthen their relations and they step up together, they will be able to tackle several issues and can really bring a change in the areas where it is most needed. So that's my biggest hope.
Amen. Let's see that.
And there is just one very last question, which would be, as a university student, how can we take part in IDC activity? Of course, through work, but if not actually working in a company or in a civil, in an NGO, how can we contribute to IDC work?
Well, even by becoming more informed, I think that's a very important thing. And for that, absolutely, you can follow the Facebook pages, the social media accounts, the web pages of NGOs, sometimes even private companies. But I think that's much more rare. The government has a kind of dedicated website, nefe.kormány.hu. That's the address. And even you can look around, and in the European arena, you can, for example, check out DevEx. It's a kind of development news portal, which could be interesting for you. At the same time, you could be involved not only in the work of Hungarian NGOs and Hungarian institutions, and you can do traineeship in the government as well. For example, in the responsible department, they used to have trainees all the time. And some of them absolutely ended up working in NGOs, development NGOs. So I think there's quite many possible ways to approach the work or the careers in development cooperation. But if we think about the international context, the EU itself has a volunteer program in which I'm quite sure you can go to developing countries as well. So check out the possibilities and opportunities there too, because that's always a good entry point for development cooperation careers.
Well, thank you very much, Réka, for this great conversation. It was really a pleasure having you. You have given us a lot of valuable information about international development cooperation. Well, this whole discussion is part of the IDEC PBL Change the Game, Not Africa project. Please don't forget to follow the project's Facebook and YouTube channels to keep up to date with the progress of the development of the serious game, and also to learn about the partners' Africa IDEC education activities. Also, you can join the Foundation for Africa's Facebook group to get an insight into the work of the largest Hungarian IDEC organization. And don't forget to follow Hans' Facebook page to be up to date with all the news. Thank you very much.
I'm thanking you for the possibility, and hopefully many of the listeners will somehow feel motivated after this discussion.
Really hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.